Mia looked at me with a face full of curiosity. "I just do my usual work," she exclaimed in admiration when she saw my skills. "This is the only thing I can brag about. But I believe this is something no one else can replicate. I want to do a job that only I can do." I remember as a child, watching a movie with my dad and excitedly talking about it. "My name is Scott, 28 years old. I work in a factory that makes tiny screws for precision machinery. When I was in the 4th grade, my loving father, who once took me to the movies, left my mother and me for a younger woman. I think it took about a month to realize he was never coming back. Next to me, I suddenly noticed would sit for hours, moving her needle over the sewing board. Her meticulous work was famous, and because of her unique skills, she even got orders from out of state. Although she earned a decent income, it wasn't enough to pay off the debt my dad left behind. With so many people trying to take advantage of us, I couldn't help but think how awful adults can be, even at my young age. I began to make sure that my mother wasn't taken advantage of by other adults and lived my life at the same time. Because of me having a suspicious and mature gaze, adults would sometimes find me creepy. So, I felt the need to enter the workforce and grow up as soon as possible. After finishing middle school, I decided not to go to high school and instead got a job. Of course, my mom was against it, but this was something I couldn't budge on. I joined a well-known machinery parts manufacturing factory in town. It seemed that I was the first person in that company who had only completed middle school, and at first, I received many odd looks and sympathetic words which were pretty bothersome to me. The one who treated me like his own son was my mentor, Ken. Inside the factory, Ken was someone everyone looked up to. It seems Ken noticed my skillful hands right after I joined the company. Among the parts that are mostly mass-produced by machines, there are tiny screws that require a human touch before they can be delivered. Ken was in charge of these parts, and he declared that he would teach me this technique. I believe Ken protected me. Being someone who had only completed middle school and was often the subject of whispers or treated lightly, he gave me a technique that no one else could replicate. It was my trump card to survive in this company. Since my father disappeared with a younger woman, it was the first time I felt such an admiration for an adult. I won't forget that feeling. That Ken also retired last year after reaching the age of retirement. I'm the only one who inherited Ken's technique. There's a part, a small screw, that only I can make. Even though new machines and systems were introduced last year, there are still parts that require the human touch. The place that Ken made for me in the company seems unshakable, no matter what. At the end of March, staff reshuffle was announced and a new department head from the headquarters is set to join. He's a longtime elite from the headquarters, probably looking to take the next step in his career. It feels a bit off when a boss who's never worked in the factory before comes in. All talk, with no real understanding of how things work. We had such an incident before, and the plant manager went to the headquarters to complain. On his first day, the new department head gathered all of us, looked down from the stage, and went on and on about his ideas. About increasing productivity by a certain percentage, lots of detailed numbers and money talk. He used a lot of fancy words, but in the end, it just felt like he wanted us to work hard for his own career advancement. Out of the blue, he said, "There's a middle school graduate among us," and I was taken aback. The department head went on about how middle school graduates aren't fit for this company, and how education reflects one's character. My co-workers in the factory chuckled, but the department head seemed oblivious. I'm the only middle school graduate in the company. Right from the get-go, in front of all the employees, he was putting me on the spot. I don't think I've done anything to be personally hated, but it's clear the department head has some animosity towards me. It put a damper on my day. Even when I'm a bit down, once I start my work, I get focused and it doesn't bother me anymore. Just like any other day, I was diligently doing my unique tasks. Then, the department head appeared. Seems like he was getting a tour from the plant manager. I couldn't ignore him, so I gave a slight nod. The department head ignored my gesture, picking up a screw I was working on as if it was something dirty. "So you're Scott, huh? Heard you're the only middle school graduate in our company. You should just know that I don't go easy on anyone." I was irked by his arrogant tone. "I'll do my best, sir." I didn't want to engage, so I just replied with a neutral phrase. The department head looked displeased. Maybe he wanted me to be more subservient, but that's against my principles. I'm not ashamed of being a middle school graduate. Typical. Middle school graduates don't even know basic manners. I graduated from a college you wouldn't even dream of getting into. That makes me someone of a higher status in society. You should be honored to be spoken to. Check your attitude. His shouting echoed through the factory. For a moment, everyone stopped their work. All eyes were on me, wondering what was going on. Seems like the department head is a pain in the neck. I sighed internally. Well, isn't it lively today? A laid-back voice echoed through the factory. Her voice has a slightly husky tone for a woman. Apparently, she's got that from drinking. I overheard her joking about it with colleagues. Her name is Mia. She's in charge of the system that runs this factory. They outsource the system, so she visits the factory a few times a week. She has jet black, long hair and fair-skinned. Her black-rimmed glasses are her trademark. She wears high heels and a long tight skirt as a suit. The skirt has a deep slit in it. She's completely changed my image of a system engineer. Here comes Mia. I swear the boss's tongue is sticking out. I'm Mia, the system engineer. You're the boss, right? Mia greets the boss. It seems she hasn't forgotten her manners as a professional. With Mia's arrival, the boss seemed to forget all about me and chatted with her, looking all smitten. Responding casually, Mia says, "Let's discuss this over there," and takes the boss away from me. Relieved, I watch their backs as the three of them head towards the office. As Mia walks away, she waves at me over her shoulder. I can't help but chuckle, thinking I owe her one now. The boss didn't show up in the factory in the afternoon, probably went back to the headquarters. The factory manager seemed stressed, murmuring, "A real pain in the butt came today." Finish time came, and all the machines were shut down. I did my final check, then wrapped up my day. Just as I was leaving the factory, I saw Mia chatting with other co-workers, having a good time. Most of the conversation was about horse racing. Apparently, there's a big race this weekend, and everyone was buzzing about how they'll place their bets. I respect Mia as a systems engineer, but I can't help but disdain her fondness for gambling. Of course, I understand it's due to some unresolved issues with my father's past, but it's hard for me to shake my strong aversion to gambling. Always gambling, always talking about horse racing. Normally, I'd let it slide, but I was already a bit irked due to the boss showing up, and I couldn't hold back. I immediately regretted my words, but once they were out, there's no taking them back. "Excuse me, you looking for a fight?" Mia glared at me with her almond eyes after my off-putting comment. She was the first to snap, and the others tried to calm her down. Gambling's no good, right? And horse racing's the prime example. Well, it was exactly a tit for tat. Today, I completely forgot about the help I had received and snapped back at her more sharply than I intended. You've never even been to a racetrack, let alone placed a bet. Don't act like you know everything and trash talk it. It's lame. Mia leaned in close, glaring at me with an upward gaze. The soft scent of her perfume wafted to my nostrils. It brought back memories of my ex-girlfriend out of the blue. I think I dated Lillian for about 5 years. She was the one who started the relationship, and she was the one who ended things. I believe I was about to be 21 at that time. It was Lillian who was assigned to the factory office from the headquarters. I remember her long brown hair, neatly curled, always looking pristine, adding a touch of glamour to the office. Lillian was 3 years older than me. At first, she acted like a big sister, always reaching out to me, which I found a tad annoying. But gradually, I found myself looking forward to her calling out to me and was surprised at my own feelings. Whenever she came to watch me and Ken work on the screws, she'd exclaim, "Wow, that's amazing," and that's when I began to open up to her. Being praised felt really good. I think that alone is a good enough reason to let someone in. The perfume Lillian wore and the one Mia is wearing now. I believe it's probably the same. It might be what I'm a little put off by Mia. On the day Lillian and I broke up, she wore that same scent. "Hey, are you even listening to me?" Mia's voice pulled me back to reality. While I was lost in thought, the conversation with Mia seemed to have moved on quite a bit. "Clear your schedule for Sunday. I'm coming to pick you up from your apartment." "Huh, what?" Before I knew it, it seemed I'd made plans with Mia. I exclaimed in surprise, a bit dumbfounded. "Pinky promise, if I lie, I'll owe you big time." Pinkies locked. Suddenly, my hand was grabbed and Mia's pinky finger aggressively intertwined with mine. The pink earring on Mia's slender finger felt a tad cold. "Don't run off on me." Saying that, Mia walked away from my side. She jokingly said to her colleagues, "Going on a date with Scott this Sunday," and laughed. As promised, on Sunday, Mia showed up at my apartment. From the apartment windows, a few familiar faces peeked out, teasingly calling out to me. I quickly hopped into Mia's car to escape. "Morning. Did you bring the money?" The first thing she said, to which I replied, "I don't gamble." Mia looked at me with a side eye, grinning mischievously. In her free time, Mia dressed casually. Slim-fit jeans with a hot pink t-shirt. She wore a light gray hoodie over it. She looked a bit younger than when she's at work. One thing worth noting: her driving was aggressive and pretty bad. As I got into the car, she warned, "Brace yourself, I'm the worst driver." She wasn't lying. By the time we reached the racetrack, I believe my nerves had been significantly frayed. Felt like a long roller coaster ride, didn't it? I couldn't help but shoot Mia an annoyed look. "You don't stay on a roller coaster for that long." To my remark, Mia laughed. True that. The racetrack, my first time there, was much more beautiful and pleasant than I imagined. Probably because of the vast open view. And not just old-timers, but many young folks were there too. Seemed like some folks just came to photograph the racehorses without betting. Mia led me to a spot where the race could be seen clearly for the first race, without buying any tickets. Watch closely. Seeing a horse race for the first time, I was genuinely moved. The beauty of the racehorses, the power of their hooves. The jockey's determination chasing after their horse right before the finish line. And the loud cheers and sighs coming from the stands as they crossed the finish line. Maybe I got caught up in the excitement of the racetrack. All these jockeys, they're all quite good looking, you know. I think it's the face of a true competitor. In the winner's circle, photos were being taken of the winning horse and the jockeys. Everyone was smiling joyfully. I heard a jockey gently pat the horse's snout, saying, "Thank you." Some jockeys die from falls. It's life-threatening for them. Of course, the horses are also risking their lives racing. Some even collapse and die right after crossing the finish line. Mia, with a serious expression, told me, "It's narrow-minded to only focus on the gambling aspect. The exhilaration of crossing the finish line first is something truly irreplaceable. The feeling of exhilaration when crossing the finish line first seems irreplaceable. After hearing that story, I watched another race. Seeing a jockey use every part of their body to push their horse to the finish line left me speechless. I thought it was truly noble and beautiful. I'm sorry, I think I've been narrow-minded. My ex-girlfriend used to tell me I had tunnel vision. While eating some pasta for lunch, I apologized to Mia. Engrossed in her horse racing newspaper, Mia suddenly looked up at me. "Hut, isn't that the boss's wife? I've heard rumors about her. She used to date a guy who only finished middle school." Hearing Mia's words took my breath away. I had heard through the grapevine that Lillian had gotten married, but I had no idea it was to the boss. I knew it but never realized how ignorant I was with office relationships. Maybe those who knew about my past with Lillian didn't want to tell me out of consideration. Moreover, Mia told me they were currently separated. Having dealings with both the headquarters and the factory, Mia is knowledgeable about what is going on in our company. The boss's persistent attempts to annoy me might have to do with it. Being pestered by her ex's husband, huh? Mia shrugged, rolling her eyes. I let out a sigh. The boss never stopped bullying me. During morning assemblies, he wouldn't mention my name, but he wouldn't forget to mockingly say, "That middle school graduate." It was as if being a middle school graduate was a cardinal sin. There were times when he even seemed to deny my very character. My colleagues, clearly frustrated by the boss's blatant behavior, sympathized with me. Then, an incident occurred. On that day, I had taken a paid leave to visit my mom back home after a long time. I was notified that a machine at the factory went haywire, so I rushed back. I was the one who did the final inspection last night. There shouldn't have been any issues. When I arrived at the factory, the manager, the department head, greeted me. The moment he saw my face, he yelled, "You damn fool," and came charging at me. "I'm sorry, can you please tell me what happened?" I apologized, bowing to the department head. The department head, however, didn't seem willing to accept my apology, continuing to shout at me. "That's why I can't stand middle school graduates. You're a nuisance. Do you have any idea how much damage you've caused to the company? You're fired." Fired. The department head insisted that I was to blame for the incident. And just as he said, I was swiftly let go. Without a chance to explain or even identify the root cause, axing me seemed to be the resolution to the incident. To anyone looking, it was a strangely abrupt solution. Suddenly jobless, my life took a turn for the worse. I had been working hard ever since finishing middle school. It felt like the rug had been pulled out from under me, and my life spiraled into disarray. Leaving the dormitory, I moved into a cheap apartment, becoming a recluse with no energy to venture outside. It was on a Saturday morning when my apartment door was banged on loudly. "Hey, let's go." I recognized the voice from behind the door. It was Mia's. I was surprised when Mia came to visit my apartment. As I opened the door, Mia gave a cheeky grin. "Let's hit the racetrack." Saying that, she grabbed my hand. In the clothes I had on, without even shaving, I was dragged off to the racetrack. The track was less busy on Saturday than on Sunday. I took a deep breath as I looked out over the turf. The expansive view made my heart feel lighter. "Maybe I'll buy a betting ticket today. Can you show me how?" Hearing my words, Mia nodded with a smile. That day, thanks to beginner's luck, I hit big and treated Mia to a barbecue dinner. "You look good with that stubble." She reached out across the table, her slender fingers grazing my scruffy chin. I gently held her hand, placing a kiss on her palm. Mia chuckled, looking tickled. "Thanks for coming. You move surprisingly fast. I might like that about you." I think that was the moment I finally accepted the subtle affection I had felt from Mia. But the happiness was short-lived. Feeling a weight off my shoulders, I invited Mia to my apartment. She nodded with a joyful look. But as we approached my place, we froze at the sight of someone waiting for me. Just from the silhouette, I recognized her immediately. It was Lillian. Lillian, why? Upon hearing my voice, Lillian looked up and suddenly embraced me. She kept repeating "I'm sorry" through her tears. Without thinking, I wrapped my arms around her. "I'm sorry, Scott. It's because of me. He was causing trouble. He was always jealous of you. He knew I couldn't get over you." Lillian's unexpected words left me stunned. Her familiar perfume filled my nostrils. Even as I tried to pull away from Lillian, she held on tightly. I couldn't help but notice Mia's gaze. "You're Lillian, right? Aren't you being a tad bit self-centered with that story?" Mia, arms crossed, said in a cool tone while observing the scene between Lillian and me. In a low voice, Lillian asked me, "Who is she?" I blurted out, "A friend." That seemed to strike a nerve with Mia. "Oh, a friend, huh, got it. You two lovebirds can stay here and dwell on the past." With that, Mia stormed off. As much as I wanted to go after Mia, Lillian's grip on me was firm. "We can start over, right, Scott?" There were no tears left in Lillian's eyes. The day after Lillian's visit, I was jolted awake by a call from the CEO. I assumed it was about unemployment benefits, but when I picked up in a groggy voice, it was the CEO, which immediately woke me up. I was asked to come to the headquarters, and feeling I couldn't refuse, I headed there. Immediately, I was ushered into the CEO's office, and I felt nervous. The CEO's talk began with an apology to me. The manager, whom I'll call the department head, was also present, shrinking against the wall. Seeing that, I understood everything. According to the CEO, the system failure wasn't due to my negligence, but the department head intentionally caused it. The truth was revealed in a report from a colleague, Mia. It was the first time I learned that Mia had been working hard to clear my name. When the CEO told me, "I want you to come back," I was surprised at my own feelings. I thought I would be really happy to hear that, but when it was actually said, I didn't feel as pleased. Even when told that tasks only I can handle were piling up, it didn't resonate with me. "I'm not coming back." When I firmly said that, it felt like two versions of me were arguing inside. I don't know if my decision is right, but I wanted to be true to my feelings. Upon hearing my response, the department head fell to the ground. He went on his knees and bowed deeply, begging. He repeatedly said, "Please come back. I have no standing anymore." To be honest, I found it ridiculous. I declined the department head's plea. "It seems you have no regrets. All right, it's your life after all." The CEO said that with a disappointed smile. I realized once again how compassionate he was. I bowed deeply, expressing my gratitude, and said, "Thank you for everything up until now. I never imagined I'd leave the company this way, but I'm truly grateful to this company for shaping me into the professional I am." After leaving the headquarters, I felt relieved. Surprisingly, I felt ready to start something new. When I returned to my apartment, there she was again, Lillian, standing at the door. Does she truly want to start over with me? After all, it was Lillian who broke up with me. Back then, I was adamant about working at the factory and kept refusing a position at the headquarters. Lillian grew tired of my stubbornness. She told me, "A man without ambition is the worst," and those words had long pained me. It made sense when she married the highly ambitious department head. "You're here again. Just met your husband." I said that while taking out my apartment key. "He's been demoted. What a way to throw away his chances of promotion." Lillian's words were sharp, and I couldn't feel a shred of affection from her. Anyway, Lillian's arm wraps around mine. "You're returning to the company, right? They were making a big fuss because there's a part only you can make. The CEO was saying you're a very valuable employee." It makes sense, I thought. It seems Lillian's affection doesn't kick in unless there's something in it for her. That thought almost made me chuckle. Is it right to say she's true to her desires? So like her. We're long done, aren't we? You were the one who ended it. Remember, saying I lacked ambition, such a cliché line. Where's your ambition now, Lillian? At my words, Lillian frowned. She pushed me away, as if throwing me aside. "I'm not going back to the company, and don't ever come looking for me again." I left those words behind as I opened the door to my apartment. As the door closed, I could hear the sound of Lillian's footsteps receding in the distance. Listening to her footsteps, I took out my cell phone. I scrolled through my contacts, looking for Mia's number. I hadn't reached out to her since our almost breakup last night. After a few rings, loud cheers came from the cell phone. "Score. Keep it up." It was lively. "What? I'm kinda busy right now." Mia's voice, sounding like she's shouting. "Thanks for the system report. I appreciate you clearing my name." I shout back, competing with the cheering sounds in the background. On the other end of the line, I thought I heard Mia chuckle. I gotta hang up. It's the main race next. Mia, always spending her weekends at the racetrack. But she's nothing like my father, who abandoned me. Wait, the words came out before I could stop them. Mia burst into laughter on the other end. "Don't be so anxious, we'll talk more later. I promise." Her words made me happier than I'd imagined. "Yeah, we'll talk later." I echoed Mia's words. And just like that, the call ended. I believe Mia's "we'll talk later" means our story continues. To look for a new job, I immediately reached out to my mentor, Ken. "I've met the woman I love. I'm looking for a job so I can propose." Ken, while laughing heartily, said, "Come work at my factory." I felt the beginning of a new chapter in my life. Mia would always be by my side. 6 months later, "You're the only one who can do it this way." Mia peeks at my work. At Ken's factory, I carefully handcraft every screw. Mia occasionally comes to watch me work. Encouraged by Mia's praise, I'd give my best. She'd look at me, eyes shining, and whisper, "I can't wait to marry a genius." I almost slipped up in my work. Being twisted around her little finger like this isn't so bad. I genuinely believe that. People like you shouldn't come to places like this. Annoying. The quality of the food drops with you around. By the way, can you even afford this? Waiter, watch out for this guy. He's super broke. It was my mother's 60th birthday celebration. She had always raised me single-handedly. To celebrate, I had saved up and brought her to this Italian restaurant. I heard mocking laughter at me. My vision went dark with anger. My name is Mike. We were always struggling financially, so my mom was working tirelessly every day. The reason? My parents had divorced. Turns out, my dad had an affair. Though we received alimony and child support, life was still tough. I made do with what I had, always being frugal and trying to prolong the lifespan of my belongings. Once I hit middle school, I didn't join any clubs to save money and headed straight home after school. "You're so dirty. You just reek of poverty." One day, as I was about to head home, I heard loud laughter near the girls' bathroom. That voice sounded familiar. It was Catherine from my class. Catherine was mean and would always taunt me about being poor. I took a quick peek and saw a girl surrounded by a few others, head hung low. It was Amy. I called her by her first name since she didn't like to be referred to by her last name due to her single-parent household. "Don't come to school, you'll spread germs." Amy's situation seemed even worse than mine. Her shoes and uniform were worn out. Catherine and her gang were ridiculing her for it, feeling as if they were mocking me too. The next thing I knew, I was standing between Catherine and Amy. "So what if we're poor? None of you earn your own money anyway." Catherine kept rambling, but most of her arguments were weak, and I could easily counter them. "Ooh, remember this." With a huff, Catherine and her gang left. I've totally been spotted." When I was thinking that casually, "Thank you for helping me." Amy said that to me, so I had no regrets. From that day, Amy and I became close friends. The bullying from Catherine wasn't as bad when we were together. We'd often hang out and even walk home together. As time went on, I started having feelings for Amy, but... "What? You're transferring schools?" "Yes," Amy said simply, and transferred out. It was close to graduation, and I figured she must have had her reasons. Since it happened so suddenly, I didn't even get her contact details. My first love ended without a confession. A few months later, I was working in a clothing company while attending an online high school. I really wanted to start working after middle school, but you should at least get your high school diploma. My mom told me that, so she had me attend high school. Of course, I paid my school fees with the money I earned, all to make my mom's life a bit easier. Then, just before graduating, good news came. I'm being made a full-time employee. Incredibly, I've been chosen to work as a full-time employee at the clothing company where I've been employed. They said it's due to my strong work ethic, positive feedback from customers, and a recommendation from the store manager. I couldn't thank the manager enough. For a high school graduate like me to make it to the corporate office of a clothing company, I was over the moon. Of course, with my educational background, climbing the corporate ladder seems unlikely. But that's okay. Becoming a full-time employee means a pay raise, and I can make life easier for my mom. A few months later, just as I started getting the hang of my job, I was told to greet an important business partner visiting our corporate office. They were someone I absolutely couldn't afford to upset. I needed to be on my best behavior. Determined, I entered the reception room. There, in a sharp suit, sat a stern-looking woman. My heart sank when I saw her face. It was Catherine. Yes, the same Catherine who used to bully Amy and me. What are you doing here, Mike?" Seeing me, Catherine laughed mockingly, much like she used to. In school, where things were more or less on equal footing, I could have talked back. But this was a professional setting, and she was an important business partner. I could only plaster a smile on my face and stay silent. It's been a long time. From rags to corporate, who did you know to get here? It's gone downhill if they're hiring the likes of you. Well, looking at you, just an ordinary employee. Do your best, I guess. Catherine smirked, took her opportunity to belittle me further, and then left. I wiped the cold sweat from my forehead. I later found out Catherine was a top performer in the sales department of our business partner. A rising star promised for promotions, the elite of the elite. No way an average employee like me stood a chance against her. I fought to avoid her as much as possible, but, to my horror, Catherine specifically requested to work with me. So, every time we had a business transaction, I had to face Catherine. This report is hard to read. Why not brush up on your language skills instead of always finding faults? Always had a distaste for uneducated folks like you. Every time we met, Catherine had a nasty comment ready. I had no choice but to endure, becoming a verbal punching bag, so to speak. But I never thought of quitting. Thanks to my dedication to my job, life with my mom had improved significantly. No way I was going to let my mom struggle again. With that mindset, I managed to brush off Catherine's cruel words. More than that, what was really bothering me was something else. My mom's 60th birthday was coming up soon. I've saved a good amount of money and want to celebrate it somehow. But embarrassingly enough, I've been so focused on earning money that I don't know what gift would be best. What should I do for her celebration? As I pondered this, my mom and I were watching TV. And then, "That looks delicious." Uncharacteristically, my mom whispered that a show featuring a renowned Italian restaurant in the neighborhood was playing on TV. Images of exquisite meals and the lavish restaurant interior flashed across the screen. I'd love to visit a place like that, even just once. Mom wasn't really asking or insisting. She was saying it more in jest. Taking out my cell phone, I discreetly looked up the restaurant. It was as expected for a high-end Italian place. Most of the menu was out of my budget. But the cheapest course, I might just be able to afford it. "Mom, let's go to that restaurant." "What? Don't be silly. You don't have to do that. I want to celebrate your 60th birthday there." Initially hesitant, my mom eventually gave in when I expressed my wish to honor her. "I'll have to brush up on my table manners," she joyfully remarked. Neither of us had ever eaten authentic Italian, so we both studied table manners extensively. On the day of our reservation, we arrived at the restaurant. I was dressed in a suit, and my mom wore an elegant dress she had rented for the occasion. "Welcome," the waiter greeted, leading us to our table. It was a table close to the entrance, and chairs were pulled out for us to sit. The room was adorned with luxurious furniture and decorations, and the entire floor was covered in a red carpet. Despite having done some research online and on TV, the opulence took both me and my mom a bit by surprise. "What would you like to drink?" The waiter presented a wine-only menu, but neither of us drank alcohol, let alone had any knowledge about wine, so we simply opted for grape juice. "Happy 60th birthday, Mom." We clinked our juice glasses, and Mom smiled with joy. "Let's start with the appetizers." The food served looked refined, something we'd only seen on TV. With our newly acquired, somewhat clumsy table manners, Mom and I began our meal. I was looking forward to a good time. That's what I thought. But reality isn't always so sweet. "Oh, what are poor people doing here?" Suddenly, a familiar voice came from behind me. "Why here, of all places?" was what I wanted to ask. I turned around to find Catherine. She was accompanied by a few colleagues, probably on a business outing. "This place will lose its charm with you here. You'll ruin the taste of the food," Catherine continued, raising her voice even louder. "And can you even afford this? Waiter, watch out for these folks. They might dine and dash." Our pleasant evening was instantly spoiled. However, making a scene wasn't the mature way to handle it. Being ridiculed was something I had grown accustomed to. I was ready to let it slide, until "His mom looks just as poor. It's scary what genetics can do." A comment belittling my mom made my vision go dark. It was a rush of anger. Make fun of me all you want, but insulting my mom, who has always supported and raised me, was something I couldn't stand. "Enough is." I stood up abruptly, knocking my chair back. "Mike, calm down." Mom tried to calm me, but my anger was uncontrollable. I had reached my breaking point. "What's all the fuss about?" Perhaps because Catherine was so loud, or because I had stood up. The chef came out to see what was going on. I recognized him from a TV interview. He was likely the owner of the restaurant. The owner himself. Suddenly, Catherine flashed her charming business smile. "I was just about to discuss the uniforms we'll be providing for your staff." It seemed this restaurant was a client of Catherine's company. Her earlier attitude was nowhere to be seen. Catherine ignored me and spoke directly to the owner. However, the owner gave Catherine a cold stare. About that, let's forget it. What? Catherine was taken aback by the unexpected response. The owner spoke with a mix of coldness and anger. You see, my daughter was bullied by you in the past, but she didn't want to mix personal matters with business. I respected her wishes, yet you were rude even to the person who had helped her. I don't want to do business with someone like you. The owner motioned to the waiter, who began to escort Catherine out. Wait a minute, there must be some mistake. This has to be a joke. Catherine, her face pale, tried to rush towards the owner, but the waiter quickly restrained her and assured her outside. Those waiters, they looked like gentlemen, but they seemed to be used to handling these kinds of situations with customers. But then again, I don't know the owner personally. What does he mean by savior of his daughter? As I stood there dumbfounded, a woman who clearly looked like she was in charge of the floor approached me. It's been a while, Mike. For some reason, she knew my name. She gave me a smile, but I had no idea who she was. I'm sorry, but you don't remember. It's me, Amy. We were in middle school together. Realization dawned. It was Amy, my first love from school. Actually, my parents got remarried, so I had to transfer schools. The man she referred to as her father was the owner. Now, Amy was supporting the restaurant as the head of the floor staff. When Catherine came for a meeting, I recognized her, but I didn't want to interfere with the business. Seeing her be so rude to you, though, I couldn't let it go. Amy's face lit up with a smile. You helped me out in the past, remember, so now it's my turn. I felt so refreshed after seeing Catherine get what she deserved. I was stunned to be reunited with my first love. But Amy's thoughtfulness made me happy, and all I could humbly say was, thank you, you really saved me. The owner, recognizing me as his daughter's benefactor, treated us to the most premium course. Amy explained each dish to us. Although it was a bit embarrassing to hear old stories in front of my mom. But thanks to that, we had a wonderful time. Thoroughly pleased with the impeccable service, we left the restaurant. But as soon as we got home, my mom said, I think I left something at the restaurant, can you go get it? She said it with a kind smile. I suspect it's just an excuse. However, this might be my last chance to enter the restaurant and speak with the owner. Taking advantage of my mom's excuse, I went back and bravely proposed a uniform order to the owner. It was partly my fault for canceling the previous order. But the owner responded positively, saying, I've been thinking about where to get the uniforms from. Can you provide some materials for consideration? Now, it was time to prove my worth. Having been ridiculed by Catherine so much, my improved proposal was well received by the owner. The restaurant decided to order their new uniforms for my company. This success led to my promotion. Me, a high school graduate. I did wonder about that, but my boss assured me that the company values employees who deliver results, boosting my confidence. Oh, yes. Speaking of Catherine, she never returned to our company after that incident. Rumor has it she was demoted after angering a major client. Even though she was competent at her job, she seemed to lack the respect of her peers, and no one seemed to object to her demotion. Well, she really got what she deserved. Thank you for all your help. Beyond just the uniform order, the owner often entrusts me with various tasks. Consequently, I've been visiting the restaurant more frequently. So, you see, I've had more opportunities to meet Amy. In fact, lately, most of my work-related interactions have been with her. It kind of feels like a blast from the past, and I can't help but feel genuinely happy. I can't shake the feeling that Amy seems happy too. Am I being overly confident? But deep down, I really have feelings for Amy. I plan to invite her to a movie soon. But that's a story for another day. Here's hoping my romantic journey goes smoothly. Hey, everyone, keep your fingers crossed for me, will you? My name is Kyle, and I'm turning 29 this year. I work at a construction equipment parts factory, and I'm in sales. Right after high school, I joined this company. I really wanted to go to college, but due to family circumstances, I couldn't. My parents passed away when I was in elementary school. They were involved in a car accident. After that, I bounced around living with relatives. It wasn't that I was ever mistreated. All of my relatives were kind to me. But no matter where I lived or how much love I received, I always felt alone. That feeling increasingly isolated me from others. Being a dependent, I couldn't voice my desire to go to college. I wanted to work and support myself as soon as possible. The simple reason I chose this company was because they offered employee housing. That being said, it's a big company locally, and the pay is decent. In sales at this company, I'm the only one with just a high school diploma. Most employees here have a bachelor's degree. To make up for my educational background, I worked really hard. I couldn't afford to lose my job. I was desperate, I guess. The lucky part was that the company's CEO is a wonderful man. During the interview, he learned about my background and decided to hire me on the spot. Even after I was hired, he treated me like a son and mentored me to be a respectable employee. I'm forever grateful to CEO. One day, my mentor and boss, CEO, called me in privately. I was asked to come without letting other employees know. Something was definitely up. I was a bit anxious. Recently, there were some unsettling rumors circulating around the office. CEO has a daughter, and the man who married into the family, becoming the son-in-law, is now the vice president. The issue was with the vice president. The vice president seemed eager to expand the business, while the CEO wanted to maintain the current state amid the recession. Their opinions were clearly divided. Opinions in the company were split between Team CEO and Team Vice President. Currently, the position of the CEO is in jeopardy due to the majority of the Vice President's group. Feeling a bit nervous, I knocked on the door to CEO's office. Inside, CEO and his secretary, Kathy, were waiting for me. I was prompted to sit on the couch in the reception area. CEO's request was a simple one. Kyle, I'm sorry, but I need you to leave the company. The CEO's face was filled with distress. Seeing his expression, I immediately replied, understood. I could clearly sense how much he had struggled to come to this decision. I didn't want to cause him any more pain. I figured you'd agree without hesitation. Kyle, I'm sorry. If it's for the good of the company, I don't mind. Thank you for everything until now. I bowed deeply in gratitude. The CEO placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder and repeated, I'm sorry. His strong hand, which had always supported me. Recalling its warmth, I felt my eyes watering. As I looked up, our eyes met, and I noticed that the CEO's eyes were also filled with tears. And so, I resigned from the company I had served for many years. After leaving my job, to be honest, I felt demotivated. I felt completely burned out. I just didn't have any motivation. During those days, out of the blue, I received a call from Kathy, the CEO's secretary. She asked if we could meet up, and we agreed to catch up at a cafe near the station. After hanging up, I realized it had been a while since I'd met anyone. I see my blurry face in the mirror. Remembering Kathy, always poised and confident, I felt a bit embarrassed about my current state. I decided to freshen up before meeting her. So, I headed to a local barber shop. When I arrived at the cafe, Kathy was already there. She spotted me and waved enthusiastically. Instead of her usual office attire, she was wearing a casual white shirt and jeans. In this outfit, she seemed almost like a different person, and it took me aback for a moment. "Kyle, it's been a while. How have you been? You look refreshed, and that's a relief." Kathy looked me up and down, smiling as if relieved. I was genuinely glad I had decided to get a haircut. As we waited for our drinks, she filled me in on the current state of the company. It seems the vice president had almost taken over the company. The CEO is planning to retire soon and live a quiet life. But the vice president is his son-in-law. I worried about whether the CEO would have a place to go after retirement. When I shared my concerns with Kathy, she said, "Don't worry." She mentioned that the CEO plans to move to New Zealand, where his granddaughter lives. His granddaughter didn't quite get along with her parents, so she went abroad for her studies and eventually got married there. She now lives in New Zealand. She had invited him to live with her after his retirement. Knowing that the CEO has a place to go, I felt relieved. Perhaps my relief was evident on my face because Kathy looked at me and smiled warmly. "I'm relieved to see you haven't changed. I was really worried that you might have burned yourself out." She hit the nail on the head, and I almost spit out the coffee I was drinking. Her insight into people is truly sharp. I recalled how she was the first to notice the vice president's schemes. "I was surprised to get your call out of the blue. I couldn't imagine Kathy having a reason to reach out to me directly. If you hadn't found a job yet, I have one I'd like to introduce you to. Interested?" Kathy said with a smile. The company she introduced me to was located on a hill in the countryside. It is about a 20-minute drive from my apartment. Using the address she gave me, I drove up a winding hill and saw a large fenced-off area. There was grass, but it didn't look like a golf practice range. As I got out of the car, I heard dogs barking. Holding the reference letter Kathy had given me, I headed to the reception. Entering the building, I was amazed. Dogs were lounging everywhere. I soon realized they were all elderly. This seemed to be a nursing home for senior dogs. They take in dogs whose owners can no longer care for them and look after them till the end. The staff explained the facility's mission to me. While we spoke, an elderly dog lay at my feet. "From today, this will be my workplace." I got a big surprise during the facility's introduction. The representative of the facility was Kathy, and the chairman was the same CEO from before. It turns out Kathy had been volunteering for pet rescue activities. This facility was an extension of that, and recently, the CEO had funded its completion. The pay would be significantly less than before, but the time spent with the animals seemed worth it. "Thank you for hiring me," I said, bowing to the facility staff. A new chapter in my life had begun. Working here, I realized this job was right for me. The elderly dogs, who had lost their places, reminded me of myself, making me grow fonder of them. "Hello, Kyle." I was surprised to see Kathy, who was supposed to be working as the CEO's secretary during the day, appear with a bright expression. With a mischievous look on her face, she cheerfully said, "I've resigned," raising her hands in the air. She looked like an innocent child. She had planned to quit when the CEO retired, but the vice president gave her a hard time, so she couldn't. Today, she was finally free and looked ecstatic about it. "Now, I can truly dedicate myself to this." Rolling up her shirt sleeves, Kathy said. Dogs gathered around her, clearly fond of her. She lovingly patted each one on the head. At that moment, she explained why she started this facility. Surprisingly, she grew up under circumstances similar to mine. She lost her parents at an early age and shuffled between relatives' homes, She opened up to me about her past. After becoming an adult and seeing elderly dogs being abandoned, she felt a deep connection as if it mirrored her own story. The pain of being left behind by someone dear and loved. She understood that feeling all too deeply, which drove her to start this facility. A place where elderly dogs can spend their twilight years in peace. She plans to put more effort into rescuing cats and supporting community cats in the future. She has also partnered with a nearby veterinary clinic, preparing to accommodate dogs and cats that get sick. Whether it's intentional or not, even if there was a special reason, those little ones wouldn't understand. All they feel is the sadness of being left behind. I just want to heal that pain. Kathy said with a smile. I was taken in by CEO, and then by you, Kathy. I guess I'm not much different from these little ones. I immediately regretted what sounded like a self-deprecating remark. It's not like that at all. I called out to you because you're special, Kyle. I needed you and no one else. Feeling as if he'd been given a pick-up line, I felt my cheeks redden. It was embarrassingly endearing, making it hard to look her straight in the face. Come on, look at me. Kathy's hands gently covered my warm cheeks. Her touch was refreshingly cool and comforting. As I looked in the direction she was turning his head to, she gave me a big smile and said, Look, isn't this little one's belly so cute? She giggled as she stuck her pug dog belly out in front of me. But you know, we have to be careful with this. It might lead to an umbilical hernia, she intently explained while observing the pug's belly. I was so distracted by the warmth of her touch on my cheek that I couldn't take in a word she said. There was Kathy, the professional executive assistant, and now, in front of me, a Kathy who laughs innocently. Both versions of her were overwhelmingly wonderful. I was genuinely falling for Kathy. I felt genuinely happy thinking about living and protecting this facility together, which was also her dream. I wrote a letter updating my old boss, who's now retired in New Zealand, about the facility and about Kathy. How I've relearned the value of life by interacting with old dogs. Every day is filled with new discoveries, which I pinned down. Weeks later, a reply came from CEO. In his neat handwriting, it read, "This is a job suitable for a gentleman like you." It moved me. The fact that the boss is pleased with the work I'm doing means the world to me. It's what made me the happiest. A year after CEO retired, the company I used to work for went bankrupt. The company's downfall seemed to be due to the poor management skills of the former vice president who took over. I heard that the employees who lost their jobs were in distress. One day, there was a note on the door saying bankrupt, and there had been no communication for a long time after. Many of my former colleagues were married and had small children. Seeing them in the streets during the day filled me with a sense of helplessness. When I was fired, there were other colleagues who also left. They were single like me. I believe CEO was doing his best to overcome the challenges by downsizing. I decided to discuss something with Kathy. I asked her if she could hire any of my former colleagues who lost their jobs. I even bowed my head, asking her to prioritize those with families over single individuals like me. Kathy seemed taken aback by my sudden request. I understand how you feel, Kyle, but you realize it's hard to hire that many people at once, right? True, this business has just started. It's unstable, and there are financial issues for sure. Yet, there was a clear need for more hands. I might not understand since I don't have a family, but I believe those who do are struggling to provide for them. I expressed my genuine feelings to Kathy. I just wish those who have the family, something I can't seem to have, find happiness. I felt that was the right path. Kathy furrowed her brows at my words. You are so kind, Kyle. Remember that you have every right to have a family too. She then took quick action. People who get things done act quickly. She immediately contacted our former colleagues, arranged interviews for those interested in jobs. Not everyone is fit for this job. Those with pet allergies can't do it. But she didn't merely screen them out. She offered alternatives to those who did not seem to be able to do this job. Even the former boss from New Zealand stepped in, pledging financial support, and we managed to secure employment opportunities for all those interested. Of course, I stayed and worked alongside Kathy. Besides taking care of the animals, I did my best to assist her in her tasks. I wanted to ease her burden even a little. Once things settled down, she looked a tad slimmer. Everyone seems to enjoy their work. That's what makes me happiest. Feeling the happiness of others is truly joyful. I think you taught me that, she said in the office one evening. I looked at her, taken aback. Her face was serene, much like that of an angel. Her beauty wasn't just external. It radiated from within. I don't think so. Maybe it's just that things we can't have always seem more appealing, right? When the workday drew to a close, children would come after school, waiting for their working parents. They wanted to play with the dogs and cats. Watching them, my eyes softened. You two can have a family, Kyle. Why are you giving up before even trying? Kathy said with a slightly irritated tone. I couldn't understand why she seemed upset. I was perplexed. I was at a loss for words. Suddenly, she stood up from her chair, looking me straight in the eyes. Okay, fine, I'll be your family. No, let me be your family. Well, that's not right. Please make me your bride. I was dumbfounded by Kathy's words. I must have had the most clueless expression on my face. After all, it's Kathy we're talking about. She's a top-notch executive assistant, and now an incredibly successful entrepreneur. She's beautiful, competent, cute, and kind-hearted. The idea of such a woman wanting to be my family was unfathomable, almost like I was hearing things. And I thought make me your wife was my imagination and desire running wild. I found myself wondering if daydreams could really be this vivid. Essentially, my brain had gone into a state of shock, unable to process what just happened. Hey, making a lady say this much and then going silent isn't nice. Is it because I'm older? Seeing me frozen and speechless, Kathy looked concerned. I shouldn't make her wear that expression. I always want her to have that innocent smile on her face. Would God be angry if I took the responsibility to protect her happiness and smile? Kathy's eyes, waiting for my reply, were filled with apprehension. Please be my wife. Please become my family and stay by my side forever. I'd be honored. Upon hearing my response, Kathy's face lit up with a radiant smile. From that moment on, both in our personal and professional lives, we chose to walk the same path together. I was somewhat embarrassed, but happy. Those feelings welled up inside me. Over the next few years, the facility gradually expanded. Truth be told, I hadn't yet formally proposed to Kathy. To be honest, both Kathy and I had been so busy with work that it wasn't a priority for a few years. Every day, there were cats and dogs that needed rescuing, and there was hardly a day when all the older dogs at the facility were in good health. With the growth of the business, there was coordination with animal hospitals and other NPOs, meetings with local government. There was hardly a moment to breathe. Do you plan on marrying your work, Kyle? Kathy said as if she was tired of waiting. Puppies, only born last month, playfully swarmed around her feet. The older dogs were each lying in the sunlight, soaking up the warmth. I do think about you, you know, I replied, lifting one of the puppies. The puppy joyfully licked my cheek. Come on, right now, it should be about me, not the puppy. Apparently, she was a bit jealous I was giving the puppy more attention. Kathy pouted, turning her face away in mock annoyance. Her cheeks puffed out in a pout, making her look as adorable as a young girl. It's hard to believe she's the sharp businesswoman running this major operation. Kathy, will you be my family? Holding up the puppy, I used it like a ventriloquist's puppet to propose to her. She chuckled confidently, saying, "There's more you should be saying, right?" Indeed, I had left things a bit ambiguous. I then spoke earnestly to her. "I've loved you for a long time." "You got it. Perfect." She cheerfully hugged me. The puppy, trapped between us, let out a tiny whimper. I felt the warmth of both the puppy and her. Maybe this was what happiness felt like. It felt incredibly soft and fluffy, like the scent of sunlight, something precious I wanted to cherish and protect. She is the one for me, perfect. Well, Chan. Called upon by the vice president, I straightened my back. "How far have you gone with my daughter?" "What? How far? Gone, what?" The VP's face is smiling. "How far in what sense?" Trying to keep the conversation going despite being flustered, he dropped another bombshell. "How about you marry my daughter?" Taken aback by the sudden proposal, I was nearly jumping out of my seat. "My name is John. I am 28 years old. Ever since I was a kid, I loved watching factories. After graduating from an engineering college, I started my job designing pipelines at a company I joined straight out of school. I've heard that when you turn your hobby into a job, you start hating it, but I love what I do." As I was busy with my work in the morning, my manager called me over. "What's up?" Not having many chances to chat with the manager, I felt a bit tense. "We're having a woman transferred to our department soon." "Oh? I'd like you to be her mentor." At the sudden offer, my eyes went wide. Me, overlooking all my senior colleagues, and moreover, wouldn't it be better if a female employee trained her? It was a natural thing to say. But the manager in a fluster said, "A female? Oh no, what if it causes trouble?" Confused by what he meant, the manager lowered his voice. "Actually, the woman transferring is the VP's daughter." "Oh?" Not understanding what that meant, the manager seemed annoyed. "The VP's daughter is joining the company because of her connections. There could be jealousy or other issues if she's trained by another woman. I think of the female colleagues I know. I believe that's an unfounded fear. They're all good people." "You see everyone as good, don't you? I've never seen you get mad or frustrated." "Well, true, I might be a laid-back type. People would often tell me that. I've never been good at confrontations. I'd rather focus on something." But I didn't expect the manager to see me as gentle. Apparently, she wasn't doing well in the admin department. Not doing well in what way? I waited, and the manager began to speak. "I don't know the specifics, but it seems she had difficulty in their department. They say she's not very amiable, though that could just be jealousy talking. Wait, she was in administration, and now she's being transferred to our pipeline design department." When I asked, "Does she have some experience with the software?" the manager made a face. "She's from a liberal arts background, but she's academically bright, so with some training, she'll likely grasp it even if it's not her field. For now, let her assist you, like copying the designs you've made. Essentially, train her as an assistant." It sounds complicated, but having someone to help with copying would lighten the load. I'm not sure if I'm cut out for training, but I guess I can manage this much. Just as I was feeling a bit optimistic, the manager, as if sensing my thoughts, warned me. "Listen, make sure there are no blunders. She's the VP's daughter, understand? Blunders. How bad does it have to be considered a blunder?" My budding optimism began to wilt. While I was preparing training materials during a break, the woman in question arrived. She was stunningly beautiful, but she had a somewhat frosty aura. "My name is Jessica," Nice to meet you. Her voice was so faint that I had to strain to hear. The manager responded to Jessica with a smile. This is John. He will be teaching you. He's a very mild-mannered guy, so don't hesitate to ask him anything. Hey, John. Taken aback by the sudden shout, I looked at the manager. His eyes seemed to say, you know what's at stake. No mistakes. I still wasn't sure what constituted a mistake. For starters, I booted up the software. I began to explain, hoping she would pick it up. But, do you need to take notes? I asked. Jessica didn't take any notes. Being someone who can't remember without taking notes, I asked out of concern if she was okay. In response, I received a soft, I'm fine, accompanied by a stern look. There was a noticeable furrow in her brow. Feeling apprehensive, I dropped the topic and asked her to draw a bit, but she couldn't draw anything at all. When I mentioned taking notes again, she reluctantly pulled out her notebook and started jotting things down, hunching over her desk. This scene, it felt familiar. My stomach began to ache. I need to use the restroom, I said, leaving my seat. The atmosphere felt so heavy. As I was about to return to my desk, I overheard a conversation. Did you hear? The girl who got in because of the VP's connections. Yeah, I've heard. They say she's super gorgeous. But she apparently couldn't handle her job in admin. Being the VP's daughter, however cute, must be a tough gig. Is this the jealousy the manager mentioned? All they were doing was gossiping without touching on her character. Sure, Jessica might have connections, but her alma mater is a renowned university known for guaranteed placements. The VP probably believed his daughter would benefit the company. Despite the tense atmosphere, she doesn't seem like a bad person. I murmured to myself and decided to head back. Sorry for the wait. Where did we leave off? I said, looking at the screen, and was surprised. The drawings, which she had struggled with earlier, were now complete up to the point I had taught. Seeing her still looking down, I recalled something. Just give me a moment, I said, and went to fetch some helpful resources. I brought back several illustrated books that explained the software's usage. And I laid out some simple practice designs on Jessica's desk. She stared intently at the materials. I've got work too, you know, but I think you should be able to draw this diagram with what I've shown you. If you're unsure, you can ask me or refer to those books. Can you give it a try? With that said, I returned to my seat next to Jessica. I positioned my keyboard so that I was half turned away from her, making it so she couldn't see my screen. Noticing this, the manager hurried over to me. What are you doing? Aren't you supposed to be training her? All is good, I simply replied, urging the manager to back off. From behind me, I could hear the determined sounds of Jessica operating the computer. It brought a slight smile to my face. An hour later, she presented a finished diagram. It took a while, but it was neatly done. There were a few sections that seemed off. Probably, she had tried fixing them manually. I showed her a feature that would have made it simpler, and I sensed her surprise. Essentially, she's just shy. Back in college, I tutored kids, and one of them was extremely shy. Such kids don't perform well when observed. They feel pressured under scrutiny. After understanding this, when she worked on problems, I did my own studies. Her grades improved significantly, and her parents treated me to a nice restaurant as a bonus. From then on, I would give Jessica some instructions and then focus on my own work, but she was incredibly talented. She absorbed everything I taught her like a sponge. The passion I had during my tutoring days was reignited, and I ended up teaching her so zealously that my manager scolded me, saying, "Hey, it's 5 p.m. now. Do you intend to make the boss's daughter work overtime?" From then on, I started to engage in small talk with her. Even during a 10-minute break, Jessica wouldn't leave her seat, so I'd buy her a drink and hand it to her. I'd also make a bit of small talk with her. "I've got 3 sisters. You know mornings are like a battlefield," I said, and her face lit up a bit. Getting carried away, I suggested, "Why don't you sit up a bit straighter? It'll be easier to see the computer screen." But she gave me a glare. Yet, remembering I was her instructor, she hesitantly straightened up. I couldn't help but admire her upright posture, but she quickly slouched again. Her face turned bright red, and she looked down shyly. I looked around and noticed our co-workers staring. "Sorry for drawing attention to you." When I said that, she kept her head down and shook her head side to side. I hate it when people stare at my large boobs. Oh, I can imagine how uncomfortable that must be. Jessica turned a surprised look on her face. She didn't expect my response. "I mentioned earlier that I have 3 sisters, right? You know what? Maybe one of them can help you." I pulled out my phone and searched for a particular store. "This is where my sister works. I mean, I can contact her directly, but look, you can chat with the store for advice. My sister works at a lingerie store. At home, she sometimes shows me her new purchases and asks for my opinion. I really wish she wouldn't. My sister often complains about shoulder pain too. She knows a lot about clothes and such. Maybe you should ask her." After my non-stop chatter, I suddenly snapped back to reality. Did I possibly creep her out by discussing a lingerie store? I'm so sorry for suddenly talking about this. In my flustered attempt to smooth things over, she still kept her head down as always, but managed to say, "Thank you," with a shy and strained voice. Her tone didn't sound upset, which relieved me. Our 10-minute break ended, and we were back to work. Even though we got a bit closer, it seemed like she still felt nervous when we worked closely together, so I kept a reasonable distance as always. Once Jessica got the hang of the graphic software, I decided to delegate some tasks to her. While I didn't expect her to handle everything immediately, especially the specialized parts, I judged that she's the kind who learns best through hands-on experience. The drawing she finished was quite accurate for a first attempt. "You did an amazing job. This is great." She seemed pleased, even as she looked down, by my genuine admiration. "Just here and here. It's partly my fault for not explaining well, but the sizes are different from this point," I pointed out, and she had a sudden realization, her face lighting up with an "oh" expression. Her ability to catch on with just that little feedback spoke volumes of her excellence. I handed her the document with the areas marked in red for her to correct. Suddenly, the manager called out, "Hey, John, come over here," and ushered me into another room. "Did you need me?" I asked as I entered the room, where the manager had his back to me. He whipped around with wide eyes. "What are you so relaxed about? Do you even know who she is? She's the VP's daughter." He loomed over me, his voice raised. "Did I do something wrong?" I replied, genuinely puzzled, prompting a heavy sigh from him. "You really don't get it. You should be more considerate." Pointing out mistakes to the VP's daughter, I was confused. "But as a trainer, it's my duty." He cut me off. "You could have corrected it subtly. What if the VP gets wind of this?" He sighed heavily at my continued disbelief. "Look, if Jessica even hints to the VP about having an incompetent employee, you're toast. Fired." That seemed so extreme, but he pressed on. "Didn't you have her serve coffee the other day?" "Yes, I remember you rushing to stop her." Jessica seemed puzzled by it. Jessica had mentioned she wanted to mingle a bit with others, and given we had some treats, I had asked her to serve coffee. "You shouldn't make the VP's daughter do such chores. If we keep treating her like she's made of glass, she'll never fit in," I thought to myself, feeling the manager's glare. "The VP expects regular updates on her training. I've said she's excellent, so you need to step up the training pace. Just handing her reading materials and leaving her be is unacceptable. Brace yourself for the worst." With that, he sent me away. I might actually lose my job. While I believed I was training her correctly, I might not have given enough thought to her being the VP's daughter. Was I wrong to think everyone should be treated equally? When I returned to my desk, Jessica promptly handed me the corrected diagram. It was nearly perfect, but I noticed one small oversight. As I was about to point it out, the image of my manager's stern face crossed my mind. Yes, perfect, as expected. Now that this is done, let's move on to this one. As I was looking for another task, Jessica asked me, "Is this part correct? I'm a bit unsure." The part she pointed out was the only section that had been overlooked. But having just praised her for perfection, I couldn't find the right words. Yes, this will do for now. I'll take a closer look later, and if there's any issue, I'll let you know." Trying to smooth things over, Jessica looked at me seriously. "Why did you suddenly switch to formal language?" I was taken aback. Without realizing, I had started speaking to Jessica more formally after the manager's comment. Stammering, I noticed Jessica looking down. She took the blueprint from my hand, saying, "It's fine, I'll work on this," and turned away. Was that the right response? However, the vice president is currently on an overseas business trip. Before he returns from abroad, I need to reconsider my mentoring approach and change my attitude towards Jessica. This realization made things a bit awkward, and the friendly atmosphere we had seemed to have reset. A few days later, the vice president returned from his overseas trip, and I was summoned. "Calling you immediately upon his return. I think you really might be in trouble." I reported the situation as neutrally as possible. The manager looked at me with concern. Before I could be officially reprimanded, I went to Jessica. "Jessica, I'm sorry. I was probably too familiar with you, wasn't I?" As I said that, Jessica looked at me with a surprised expression. I've rarely seen Jessica's face lift up from its usual downward gaze. "She's really beautiful," I thought as I couldn't help but stare. "What do you mean?" I found it hard to give a direct answer. "It's nothing. I've been called in. Can you finish up this blueprint?" Handing her the blueprint, I heard the manager's voice echoing across the department. "Hey, John, let's go." I felt as if Jessica was watching me as I determinedly headed towards the manager. I knocked and entered the vice president's room. There was a man standing there, well-dressed and well-postured. "Sorry to call you in. Please, take a seat." Urged, I sat down on the lavish leather sofa. I felt uneasy. "So, how's Jessica? She originally studied liberal arts, so this is a bit out of her field. Do you think she can handle it?" The VP's calm voice resonates throughout the room. My knees shook from the nervousness. "Yes, sir, she is a very talented girl. I have very little to teach her." Mid-sentence, the vice president grunted. Even so, she doesn't seem to be making an impact yet." I broke out in a cold sweat. "No, that's not it. John is slow. He just couldn't keep up with her pace." The manager quickly jumped in to defend me. "I'm so sorry. Having her serve coffee, in this day and age, it's quite backward, right? Haha." The vice president remained silent. The increasingly uneasy manager continued. "It's not like John had any ill intentions. He's just a bit carefree at times." The vice president gestured for him to stop. "I want to hear from John. Tell me, how do you find my daughter?" Swallowing hard, I tried to respond when he added, "Can you be honest? I'm not trying to trap you or anything." Maybe those words put me at ease. I found myself talking without even thinking. "She's very genuine. She seemed pretty shy, and when I constantly taught her, she seemed tense. So, I gave her some books and encouraged her to learn on her own. Still, she understood well. I might need a little more time since I didn't directly guide her, but I believe she'll handle her tasks efficiently." The manager was about to interject, but the vice president silenced him with a glance. Did she manage to serve coffee properly? The vice president's calm voice made it hard to tell if he was angry. I decided to answer honestly. I thought it might help her bond with everyone in the department, but I realized it was thoughtless. The vice president seemed to smile subtly at my remorse. Well, understood. You both may leave. As we were about to leave, the manager rushed in. I'm sorry, John's still green as a professional. Perhaps he thought I was about to be fired. But the vice president chuckled. I never asked for special treatment for my daughter. I hope you'll guide her strictly. The manager's eyes widened at those words. John, how about dinner tonight? Nothing formal, just want to have a little chat. I accepted the invitation I couldn't refuse, feeling pretty nervous. They'd chosen a fancy restaurant. Adding to the ambience, there's the vice president right in front of me. And Jessica is also sitting there. It's pretty formal here. Well, John. I straightened my back when the vice president addressed me. How far have you gone with my daughter? What? How far? Gone? What do you mean? The vice president has a smirk on his face. What does he mean by how far? Seeing me in a state of panic, the vice president chuckles. I'm talking about work. What did you think I was talking about? Seeing the vice president laughing like that, my face turned beet red. Dad, stop teasing him like that, Jessica interrupted. Oh, it's about work. Didn't I just explain that to him? Well, I'd love to hear how far you two have gone personally, too. Hey, what are you saying? I've never seen Jessica react this way before. She seems more relaxed around her family, and even in this weird situation, I can't help but feel comforted by it. Why not? John is a good man, right? At that remark, I widened my eyes in surprise, and Jessica looked shocked. Stop it. Seems like you understood my daughter's shyness. She had a hard time in the admin department. I felt that it wouldn't do for her to be like that forever. Maybe I made a mistake by suddenly putting her in admin department. Sorry for causing trouble. Ignoring his daughter's protests, he continues talking to me. At the mention of causing trouble in admin department, Jessica lowered her head. In admin department, you have to deal with a lot of people. I get a little nervous when I take in documents for certification. I'm not great with social interactions either. Just like I heard, John, you're such a kind person, always having Jessica's back. Jessica didn't retort anymore. She hung her head as if waiting for the storm to pass. I'd feel relieved if such an understanding man was by my daughter's side. John, would you marry my daughter? Taken aback by the sudden proposal, I was about to jump, but Jessica's sharp enough of this nonsense brought me back to reality. Yeah, right. But I heard at the company that you might be getting laid off, that you were scared. Trying to change the topic, Jessica interjected. Where did you hear that? I responded in a flustered tone. Jessica muttered, from my seniors. Then the vice president said, I did something bad. The manager is a good guy, but he's a bit old-fashioned. He thinks all of the relatives of higher positions are superior. Sighing deeply, he grumbled. Don't worry, it won't come to you getting fired. Please continue looking after my daughter. I bowed deeply in response, just as the vice president's cell phone rang. Excuse me for a moment, he said, and left the table. Now, it was just the two of us. Things were a bit awkward after that conversation. I took a sip of my beer. I'm glad it was all just a misunderstanding. You were acting strange towards me, so that's what it was. Slightly pouting, she sipped her wine. I'm sorry, I get scolded by the manager. I bowed my head deeply. Because I've always been misunderstood, being known as the vice president's daughter or for being shy, I felt a bit sad thinking here we go again. Hearing that, I bowed even deeper. My head was nearly touching the table. Well, the misunderstanding's cleared up now. Let's continue to get along. When I looked up, Jessica, with a slightly dazed expression, was gazing at me. All of it was a misunderstanding. Huh? What does she mean? My dad's take her comment might not have been a misunderstanding. Hearing her mumble those words, my heart almost leapt out of my chest. No, but I'm such an ordinary, unreliable guy. Surely, I'd only be a burden to someone like you, right? I felt dizzy. And I've only had a few sips of beer. I've imagined our married life. You'd probably be a great dad. Of course, I will. If I marry Jessica, I'll be the best dad, the best husband. Unable to voice those inner thoughts, Jessica, with tears in her eyes, said, "Sorry for getting a bit carried away with the drinks. I must be bothering you. But you noticing my shyness and not judging me for my chest complex, it's all a first for me, and it made me happy." My rationale went out the window. If you're okay with someone like me, I want to be by your side forever, in a somewhat fancy restaurant. My declaration echoed through the quiet hall, making the spotlight-shy Jessica quite embarrassed. After a moment of silence, Jessica's phone vibrated. A notification from the vice president read, "Take your time, you too." 3 months have passed since Jessica and I started dating. Today was our long-awaited shopping date. "This lingerie is super comfortable," Jessica exclaimed. I unintentionally glanced at her cleavage. Noticing my gaze, she shot me a glare. "Where are you looking?" She was the one who brought it up, but I quickly apologized, saying, "Sorry." My sister, who had previously consulted with Jessica at her shop, became good friends with her and brought her in as a loyal customer. It seems Jessica picked out a few items that she was quite satisfied with. For some reason, the entire bill was sent to me, but I happily paid. Jessica was told by my sister that it was a first-time customer discount. Suddenly, I spotted a dress in the showcase that seemed like it would suit Jessica perfectly. I took Jessica's hesitating hand and led her into the store. I discreetly asked the approaching sales associate to give us some space and suggested Jessica try on the dress. Jessica's unusual reluctance to enter the store was probably due to the sales associates approaching her. Standing guard in the middle of the fitting room area, I called out, "How's it? Do you like it?" In response, the curtain of the fitting room opened slightly, revealing Jessica's face. "Thank you," she whispered into my ear, "for keeping the sales associate away." She noticed, "Huh?" "You're welcome," I replied with a smile. Jessica said, "Come a bit closer." Doing as told, she gently kissed my cheek. "Stay with me forever," she murmured and closed the curtain. "I'll buy her a ring later. I will ask her to marry me." Imagining introducing myself to the vice president later on as her fiancé, I straightened up with determination. I wonder which ring would suit Jessica's delicate finger best.